Welcome to our podcast, Campfire Convos, and we are on episode number 4, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So, today I have something rather special for everybody, and it's something that's after my own heart, perhaps quite literally. Ooh, that was loud.
Oh,
Ooh, man.
Oh, you were on such a good roll there.
So, I had an intro available, and I'm just going to read it off my phone, because you know what, I'm dumb as fuck, and I can't remember anything. So, that's what I'm going to do. So, welcome into the void, everyone. And this is a section of this podcast involving everything told in the dark and everything dark untold. So, here I'll brush up on things like cryptids, grimoires, just kind of things that you don't really think about on a daily basis, or perhaps if you do, well, you're a special one. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast. So my first subject is going to be the Necronomicon, which I actually have a little bit of experience with, and that's definitely going to be on a later episode, because it is a very long story that kind of correlates with a bunch of different things. So, what is the Necronomicon, you ask? Well, to sum that up, it's really hard because there are actually 3 different versions of this book. One is like a journal from this guy named Abdul al-Hazred, who basically supposedly existed in 700 AD in Yemen. Now, this location is, where would you call it? Ancient Mesopotamia, or basically like ancient, like Middle East. So, Abdul al-Hazred was considered the mad Arab who went on an adventure and found ancient technologies and mythos that was basically, I don't even know how you would explain it, otherworldly. Just something that was like an omniscient kind of tome.
It's a big word.
It's like the PlayStation 5.
Like the PlayStation 5. It is omniscient. It is all powerful. So yeah, 700...
Is it as good as the Xbox?
Just not as powerful as you, right, Corey?
Jesus. Is Jesus all powerful?
Oh, no, you're going to offend so many people in this fucking...
No. Well, basically that's okay, because this entire book is basically about how God doesn't exist.
There you go, just spit it out there.
I'm just spitting it out there. I mean, I'm not religious. I don't think any of us are religious here.
My brother is.
Christian?
Yeah. See, there you go.
Is he actually?
No.
No way.
His name's
There's
Christian.
no way
Yeah, I
he's
guess his name's
religious.
Christian.
Oh, man.
All right, so I'm going to bust out the books here because I can't really explain it.
I'm going to bust
to
it out.
you. Jesus Christ. All right, I'm going to bust out these books without Colton busting a nut.
There you go.
Because there's
those left.
3 versions of them.
You're going to bring out all 3 versions.
Yeah.
Corey, did you even tell him what this book is about, though?
No, because I have
I'm
to.
really confused, Corey. You gotta tell us about this book.
I will.
tell us what this book
but I
does.
have to bust out the books first.
Did you leave them over there?
Yeah, I've got them right here. Let's
Oh, you have them right there. Okay, Corey was actually really prepared for this.
I was.
He's actually very excited to tell you guys about this stuff, since we don't really listen anyways.
Yeah, exactly. They're not on my level.
Not on you.
So, I'm sitting on my phone. That's comfortable. Ooh, I'm gonna have a square
How about I just
butthole after
hold
this.
it? How about I just... Oh.
Actually, yeah, that's a good idea. Here, you hold these.
Yeah, I'll hold your books, Corey.
Yeah. Gotta get you to hold something.
This is the type of shit Corey would bring to, like, English class and make all the religious kids really uncomfortable.
Yes, that is my specialty. I like making people uncomfortable. So,
Oh, my God.
here is the first book, which I have seen actually a lot of kids reading. I actually saw this book first in, I think it was grade 5 or 6, I believe. Because that was, I lived in the States, and that was around middle school era. So just before middle school, I saw this book being read. And I had no idea what it was. So this one here is the one by, let's see, H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft was a poet, but he was mostly a horror story writer. And he adopted a lot of things that actually came from the Necronomicon. And when people see this book, you read Necronomicon. This is not the Necronomicon. This is a compilation of all of his horror stories, which were kind of adapted from the Necronomicon. I'm sure a lot of you have heard things about Cthulhu or Nyarlathotep, things like that. A lot of fancy... Yeah, exactly. Yog Sothoth and shit like that you have no idea where it comes from. All you know is it's what grungy goth kids worship in their closet.
Absolutely. And in their group.
Yeah, and in their group. So if you see this book right here, this is not the Necronomicon. This is a compilation from H.P. Lovecraft. If you like horror stories that are from a dude in the 1800s or whatever, read it. It's good, but it's not what you're looking for. Which brings me to the next book.
But you never told them like what it. Okay.
I'm getting to that.
You're getting to that.
All right. So,
Okay.
this is the Necronomicon, and it's by an unknown author. And I repeat, it is not known. But the author's name is Simon.
Simon.
So apparently...
Simon Cowell? Okay, I'm sorry.
Sure, let's say Simon Cowell wrote this. All right, so this guy Simon, he showed up to an editor's doorstep, and all he had with him was, I believe it was documents on an aircraft, and this book.
And what year was this?
I think this was in the early 1900s, so like 1940 to like 1970.
Ooh,
I think
so
this was...
during World War II, huh?
I think so. And this is from it was published in 1977. So this is a form of the Necronomicon, which is actually the spell book. Now, what this book is an actual story from Abdul al-Hazred as a summary. So if you're looking for the actual spells and like incantations, things like that, this is the book. And this is more like a history. So when you actually get into the Necronomicon, this book from Simon as an introduction says that when they actually made this book, when they were editing it, getting it all ready to go, terrible things were happening to the editorial staff, to Simon, who just doesn't really exist because they don't know who he was. And it basically just shows you that this book, it supposedly predates almost all grimoires. It's known as the ultimate book of magic. It's actually called the Black Book of the Dead. So when you actually get into it, it's really hard to understand. Really hard. Like there's, for the language that they had at the time in the 1970s or whatever, which obviously isn't that long ago.
But they did write differently.
They did, absolutely. I mean, back then there wasn't any internet and kids were smarter back then. We're all dumb as fuck.
Yeah, we I'm not even gonna lie, we are dumb as fuck now.
Yeah. So when you actually read
I would say you are not me.
So when you actually get into it, there's a lot of language, but basically what this book does is it combines a whole bunch of different aspects, such as Atlantis, the good and evil that exists in everything. So when you have books like the Bible, you have the good, you have the evil. In almost anything, like even in Indonesian religions, who was that? I can't remember.
But you didn't tell us what the book represents.
It's the Book of the Dead.
Oh, okay, now we know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really hard to explain unless you actually read it, but the intro basically tells you that this book predates almost all grimoires and religions, and when you read it, it's extremely eye-opening because it's not about a god, it's not about an ultimate power, it's not about all the little things in life, it's about how everything is connected in the sense that when you read it, it's looking at evil forces that aren't actually evil, and it's looking at good forces that aren't actually good. It looks at things as if it was an astronomical plane. There is no good, there is no bad, there are only forces that we will never understand. So when you think of that, if you've ever heard of civilizations that are types, so you have like type 1, type 2, type 3, and type omega. This book, for its age, or supposedly when it was written in 750 AD.
This one was written in 700 AD, was it? This was the one? Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is the one.
And then they re put it together in the 1970s?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Because they couldn't really make sense of it. They couldn't summarize it. They had people to interpret the actual writings.
So this was written in a I'm dumb. Okay, so this was in like a Mesopotamian language, and then they translated it to English.
Yeah, exactly. It was written in Arabic back then, but some people think that it predates the AD by a couple thousand years because some transcripts are in Sumerian, which is the very first language that was ever created in 4300 BC by the first civilization, the Sumerians. Now, when you read this book, and once again, those good and evil forces, things like that, it's on an astronomical plane where it describes how religion basically comes from a single source. So it's really up to the reader to interpret it how they want. But this book in specific is designed to not only give you an education of what these forces are and how they affect the universe, but it also is about you and your own life. And as some of you might know, there are like Wiccans and people who still practice witchcraft. It is so well written that it even then describes the psychology of how people think that witchcraft can alter your reality, because there are scientific articles about how just the action of thinking about something can actually change the chemistry in your brain, like thinking about healing certain parts of your body, things like that. And this book acknowledges that, is that perhaps in some way everything is connected, and if everything is connected, then us just thinking about something can change the actual reality. So when you are like trying to make sense of this book, it takes a lot of interpretation and a lot of memorization for these words and entities that control the forces that supposedly exist or whatever. So yeah, this book by Simon is actually about the spells, the incantations, and understanding how those forces actually work. It's very scary and mind-opening, and I've had some weird experiences. Actually, I've had a lot of weird experiences with this book, and that's probably going to be on another episode. But yeah, it's you really just have to read it. If I had time, I would go through some of the excerpts of it, but there are just a million of them that are just so eye-opening, and it's just really hard to make any sense of without interpreting it yourself. And then we're going to move on to the next one.
Before you move on to the next one, what you should do is tell us a spell. What we went out.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
I mean, like,
cool, that's loud.
sorry, like nothing too spooky, but
Yeah, of course.
you know, something simplistic.
So this will give you guys an example of just how, like, not like, to us it's nonsensical, but to somebody who is more educated on all of this, it might make sense. I'll just find an excerpt here. Here we go.
Definitely one I can understand.
Yeah, should I?
All right, so this is actually the very first page of the Necronomicon. So it's not the summary or like the intro from Simon, the supposed interpreter / like author of this book. Well, Abdul al-Hazred's the author, but he basically translated it and made his own version of it. So this is what it says for the very first page. This is the testimony of all that I have seen and all that I have learned in those years that I have possessed the 3 seals of Masu. I have seen 1,001 moons, and surely this is enough for the span of a man's life, though it is said that the prophets have lived much longer. I am weak and ill, and bear a great tiredness and exhaustion, and sighs hang in my breath like a dark lantern. I am old. The wolves carry my name in their midnight speeches, and that quiet, subtle voice is summoning me from afar. And a voice much closer will shout into my ear with unholy impatience. The weight of my soul. I lost my.
This is so. Jeez.
I know. And a voice much closer will shout into my ear with unholy impatience. The weight of my soul will decide its final resting place. Before that time, I must put down here all that I can concerning the horrors that stalk without, and which lie in wait at the door of every man, for this ancient arcana that has been handed down from old, but which has been forgotten by all but a few men, the worshippers of the ancient ones. Their names will be blotted out. And if I do not finish this task, take what is here and discover the rest, for time is short, and mankind does not know nor understand the evil that awaits it. From every side, from every open gate, from every broken barrier, from every mindless acolyte at the altars of madness, for this book of the dead, the book of the black earth, that I have writ down at the peril of my life, exactly as I received it, on the plains of Ajiji, the cruel celestial spirits from beyond the wanderers of the wastes. And that's the first page.
Thanks for
Jeez.
sharing, Corey.
No problem.
I feel like I'd have a panic attack if I was on something.
Yeah. And actually, now that I read that page, I kind of remember something where there are ancient ones, and then there are, I can't remember what they were called, ancient ones.
Oh, and just,
and then- yeah.
just so you know, that's then we have 2 minutes after that.
2 minutes?
No, we have 13 minutes,
13.
and then you have like a little bit of buffer. So
Okay,
just
cool.
to like wrap it up.
Yeah. I'm just trying to find here what the actual page was called, but basically.
So there are spells in that book.
Oh yeah, there are spells, there are incantations and wards for the evil ones, which I can't believe. That's what it is. There are the ancient ones, and then there are the old ones. What are you gonna say, Mariah?
Sorry. So you just read us a spell. Nothing bad's gonna happen to us, right?
No, that was anything. That was so far from a spell. Like some of the spells in this have like words that are so long I couldn't even get Einstein to pronounce them because it's just. And there actually is a special way to pronounce each one of them because it is in Arabic that these names are
cool.
written in.
Oh, but I guess it would be And was Arabic like Mesopotamian? It sounds a lot different though. I've heard it. It sounds different.
Yeah, so Mesopotamia was actually ancient Iraq.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so it's in the same geographical area, just like if you think of it in like Canada terms, it's like the province over.
Okay.
Yeah. So that brings me to the second book here.
Yeah.
Now, this is actually the first Necronomicon that I read, and this one makes zero fucking sense. Like, 0 sense. It is kind of like reading the journal of Abdul Al-Hazred, and he was called the Mad Arab, and I was like, oh, it's probably just another book that's just, some person just wrote trying to scare people, and it definitely scares you.
So you think he was actually insane? Or do you think he was just...
I definitely do think you're insane.
Probably.
This is you.
But,
Oh, Jesus.
yeah, but this is an interpretation from Donald Tyson, and it's The Wanderings of Ahazred, which is like his journal on his quest to learn about these ancient ones and these celestial beings that control the world. And as some people might know, Cthulhu is a character in this book where he is a being that lies at the bottom of the ocean, and he lives inside of this, like a castle inside of a chamber. And to unlock this chamber, you need a certain spell or a bunch of devout worshippers to come down and unlock this chamber. And what that will do is bring Cthulhu back from his eternal sleep. And it's thought of, or it's said that Cthulhu, being one of these all-powerful beings that happens to reside on Earth, his power is so great that he controls the will of humans, and that people who actually believe these Necronomicon books are being controlled by Cthulhu, and that eventually there will be some kind of task force that will go down to the depths of the ocean and say this manuscript and awaken Cthulhu, which is kind of like interpreted as the coming of God, because you've heard of Rapture, you've heard of Armageddon, things like that.
Ragnarok.
Yeah, that's like
Norse.
That's Norse. Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like that. And that's just one little. I mean, it's a big character, but it's just one out of many that are all powerful and have these powers that you can barely even fathom as a human. And there's actually one excerpt that's followed me as a human as I've thought of it, is that perhaps these beings made humans or designed humans through evolution, that we have our sexual desires from the same places that we pee and shit out of. So if you think about that, it's kind of like, if you're an all-powerful being, wouldn't it be interesting or kind of funny to you if you made a species that reproduced with the same organs that they relieve themselves out of?
So what are you saying? That they did that?
Well, I'm not saying that, the book is, but...
Oh, Jesus. Is that what it talks about?
Yeah, is the formation of the worlds. As a matter of fact, there's actually a being in this book that for Abdul Al-Hazred to write a book like this, he says that this god is a lot like a god playing a flute, and that the sounds of the flute are the vibrations that the universe revolves around, which is a really interesting concept, because if you think about it, the world really is just vibrations.
Yeah.
Even light forms are just oscillations of a light wave.
That's true, yeah.
But in a sense, why would someone with such skills as a god create a joke?
Well, exactly. I mean, if you were a type omega god and you controlled the actual fabric of the universe, or you had control of galaxies, what would you do in your spare time? Everything would be boring to you. I mean, it would be nothing for them to create a species just out of fun. Like, what would you do? You could do anything. And the thing is, we can't even understand what a species or a god like that would do, because they're so vast and powerful that you can't even fathom them as a human. It would be like an ant looking up at a human and thinking, what does this human do? An ant doesn't know that we do taxes or work our 9 to 5. All it knows is that we are a god to it. We can decimate its anthill with just some gasoline and a torch. Like, it's something like that, where we are just ants to these. In fact, we're probably not even ants. We're probably closer to bacteria to these gods. It's something that you could never fathom.
So is this like a religion then? Because it sounds more like, it almost sounds like a cult to me.
I was about to say cult.
Almost sounds
That's
like
what it
a
kind of
cult.
sounds like.
Yeah.
So
If I did enough drugs, I'd probably be into this.
probably, yeah. There is
Jesus.
there is a cult to it, but if you look at it in a religious perception, you will find religion in it. And
But can it be like not can it be interpreted as just not religious? Like, does it always have to be a cult or a religion? Can it just be an interpretation?
yeah, so that's actually a good question, is that it's once again, it depends on your perception of the actual book, because if you perceive it with a scientific mindset, it's actually incredibly eye-opening how this guy had a perception of the stars, and that he accessed these technologies and could form his own interpretation of these gods, and supposedly he gained access to these powers and communicated quite frequently with these beings, and that's how he became so conscious and so intelligent, by speaking with these beings. Now, how he came in contact with them is a little curious, because in the book, in this book actually, the actual journal of Abdul al-Hazred, it says that he went through a point in his life where he got tossed into the desert to die, but he found, through enjoying what is dead and learning that there is life beyond death, more than we can imagine, that if you learn to find and follow the light in the darkness, or just follow the darkness itself, you can find things that are so unimaginably powerful that it can lead you to these beings, such as in one part he goes into a cave and eats these spiders or something like that.
Jesus, scared me.
And the spiders allow him
Good timing.
to see in the dark and meet this witch in this cave that you need to have a conversation with this witch or whatever. And the witch will tell you where to find a certain place that you can go. And this place is in the middle of the desert, and it is basically a room full of crystals. And you have to go to this room on a moonlit night, and the crystals will basically form a map. And this map, when you sit in the chair in the middle of this room, is a celestial map. And it's not just a celestial map, it's also a time-traveling machine. But it's not for your physical form, it's for your mind. So when he looks into these crystals and figures out how to use this map, he's able to go into the past and see different versions of Earth, different versions of these celestial beings' homes, and discover what it really is to be one of these gods. And it's so hard to actually explain and interpret other than just reading this book, because
Jeez.
yeah, they say that when you read these books, you're either going to go down 2 routes. And the first route is, well, maybe 3 actually. 3 routes. 3, so number 1 is you just don't find interest in it and you just put the book down, which is fine. I mean, if I was younger or whatever, this book would have made no sense. 2 is that you begin reading it and it's so life-changing and so confusing that you just don't know how to interpret it. They call it opening vistas of reality that you just didn't want to know, which I completely agree with. When I read I've
Just so you know.
Yeah. When I read this book, the actual Journal of Abdul Hazred, it was more of a horror story to me. It was scary, but it wasn't life-changing. It was just weird, which is cool. It has some actual pertinent knowledge to it, but it's not changing. It's just weird, and you gain a little bit of perspective for this guy. When you read the Necronomicon by Simon, it has a scientific aspect to it, which actually has valid facts that are just so mind-opening and so unreal. You don't know how to really interpret it, aside from the fact that maybe the reality you're living in isn't the reality that you think it is, which is opening up vistas of reality that you perhaps didn't want to know. So that's path number 3, which is you go down this book and you read it and you try to find facts with it, and it's almost maddening with the sense that it talks about other religions. It talks about almost everything that life can offer, and you either take this knowledge and refute it, or you keep searching. And that's something that I find I've done, is I'll go back into the book numerous times and try to find answers. But these answers are just, it's hard to find. There's just so many ways to interpret everything that it's just confusing and maddening. So no matter what way you read these books, it's just, you will never find a solid answer. So yeah. And as for Abdul Hazred, he supposedly died in a market, but it wasn't just any way to die. Supposedly when he grew of old age and he was in the market just doing his business, the deals that he made with these gods took their price. And the final price was for him to be, according to witnesses that were in this market, lifted him into the sky, and this was an invisible being. Mm-hmm. Nobody actually saw this, what it was.
Yeah.
They lifted him into the sky and tore him apart and consumed him and showered the market with his blood.
No, that's fucked up.
Oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah. So that's supposedly the way that he died. But as for that, I don't really know 100% what the true story is. It's all up to interpretation whether or not it's true or not. But
yeah,
it's sure. Just it's pretty wild.
Jeez, that's insane. Well, I loved your wording on that, Corey. Thank you very much.
That was actually pretty good.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
I appreciate.
I appreciate you showing us your books today, Corey.
Well,
no problem.
I just think that was amazing to hear your story about your life experiences with the book and what you've taken from it. And I can tell you're really passionate about it because of how you describe the information that you take from it. And you obviously know a lot about it. I think you got that book when we met when we were 14.
Yeah, I got it. I actually found it at a what are those stores called?
Pawn shop?
No, the
thrift store?
Yeah,
Value Village?
Yeah.
I know your mind so well.
Yeah.
Wait, is that where you got the book?
Yeah, I got the journal from Value Village, I got the actual spell book from Barnes and Nobles in Ontario.
Shit,
What made you pick up these books, Corey?
When or why?
Why? What intrigued you?
Oh, and guys, we have a minute left. It's.
Oh yeah. Anyways,
just so you know.
I when I first read the book that I got from Value Village, it kind of piqued my interest, and then just a year ago, I actually found the spell book in the Barnes and Nobles. So it's just. There's a whole lot more information which we'll cover in another episode.
Yeah, that was awesome. I'd love to hear you talk about it again in another episode, Corey, because that was awesome. And I want to hear some more about what you know, and I want to hear some spells. So.
Yeah, we'll definitely cover some of the weird stuff in there.
I definitely won't be here for that.
Oh, damn. Right, don't say that. Because you'll be busy reading the book.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
So, that was the episode on kind of a brief summary of the Necronomicon, and hopefully it's persuaded some of you to maybe give it a read. If it deterred you, I definitely don't blame you, because it's a very scary book. And, of course, it is known as the King of Grimoires, if you know what a grimoire is. So, give it a read. And if you don't, I don't blame you. But, that was a dark episode at Campfire Convos.
Before you end it, is there anything about astral projection in there?
I think it would be a little, once again, up to interpretation, but actually one of the key features of the book is astral projection and bringing your consciousness out to these planes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
Oh, cool.
So yeah,
Awesome.
that
Okay.
was it.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much
Nicely
for
done.
listening, and like and subscribe for more as we'll be posting weekly. And see you in the next episode, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Adios.
Gang gang.